Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Communities in Place Overview and Security Committee. It's Wednesday, the 17th of November. So, firstly, can I have apologies for absence?
We have apologies for absence from Councillor Scott. Is there anybody else?
Okay. Next, disclosure of members' interests. Any member to disclose of on the agenda?
Sorry?
Yes. Disclosure of members' interests?
Oh, no.
Yeah. Okay, next is forward plan of cabinet decisions. Is this what you want to speak?
Yeah, nothing to add, Chair.
Councillor Dale?
Yes, I think I've already discussed, or it's been discussed with it. It was just about the library services, and I just wondered where we were. I think about, I can't remember, 3 or 4 meetings ago, I think, that library services, because it had been raised as an issue by quite a lot of residents.
Yeah.
And it was the rural areas in particular. Anyway, we were told at the time that a report was going to come, or it was under review.
Yeah.
So what's happened is in the forward plan, we have service redesign, libraries and customer services, which is going to Cabinet on 10th of February. So when will the opportunity be? Because obviously I presume that is not a policy decision that will be being made, or is it? I'm sure maybe you explain.
I'll just check before plans if there's anything else on there that I haven't included in the document. As I understand it, the report was to come to you, I think it was in October, but we were asked for a deferment because there was the service was being redesigned and they wanted to go through consultation. Mm-hmm. And the consultation was to start in mid-January. And the feeling was that if it came to this committee in January, that would just be the start of the consultation, so it wasn't really as meaningful as it could have been. And felt that if we put it back to the February meeting, it would still be within the consultation period, but it would also give officers and the cabinet member the opportunity to sort of update members on the sorts of issues that were coming through as part of the consultation, but also to allow the committee to be part of that consultation too, as the consultation wouldn't have closed. Now, I understand the anomaly is that on the forward plan, I should have picked up myself earlier on, but on the forward plan, there is a report going to Cabinet on the 10th of February about the service redesign. The information I have received to date suggests that that must be just an update on progress. The final decision, if the consultation doesn't expire till the end of February, early March, can't be until May or June, I would have thought.
Well, the cabinet decision during the consultation process.
Precisely. Yeah. And so by putting that item in February allowed you to see how the consultation was progressing, but also to allow this committee to be part of that consultation.
I think the big thing is it says to outline the proposed changes. Okay. My concern is that we have the budget setting in February. And the proposed changes, if it goes to Cabinet, that as it reads now, if it goes to Cabinet, those changes could come into the budget setting process. Which doesn't really align with what we wanted to be part of and part of the consultation, because quite a big change.
Well, potentially. But like I said, I think Sean's put it well, is that if it comes in February, it will still be within the consultation period, but we would have a more informed discussion because we'd have had, the officers and the cabinet would have had more feedback from the consultation for us to discuss.
So can we just the service, what you've actually put in for most of the forward plan? So if you could put in the outline, the proposed changes to make, can you change that wording to make sure that we all have and understand the fact that actually we're looking to review the proposed changes. So when the cabinet will not be out agreeing the outline ones, which could go then to cabinet for the scrutiny committee, not for scrutiny, for the budget setting process. And we all might have a hiccup about saying, hey, this is really going to upset the rural areas. And we haven't had a say in it.
You know perhaps better than I do, but it depends really on what stage of the budget process this is affected by. It may well be that originally this was, as I say, going to be part of a report earlier this year, and it may well be that the process has just been delayed for all sorts of reasons, and it could well be last case.
Yeah, I mean,
Last year.
the timing, I mean, I think if the consultation is not going to close till, well, end of February, March, it'd be too late to include in the
Yeah.
budget process for this year, I
Yeah.
would have thought. I think that if any proposed changes are likely to be in the following budget, I think, just by the timing, I can't see the timing of preparing, new changes after a consultation that finishes at start of March, because the budget's all agreed by February, generally.
I mean, notwithstanding what I've already said about the timing and,
Yeah,
being
yeah.
part of the process and the reasons why it's come to you in February rather than
Yeah.
January, I will get in touch with
I think
the officers
think
in the meantime and raise the issues that you've raised
Yeah.
and see whether there's a
Well,
similar explanation to it.
yeah, if you can circulate once again answers to confirm they're not making the decision, then we'll get a chance.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can we check that minutes properly?
but that'll be minuted and.
Right, that would be.
And I will forward up for the weekend.
Right, okay, thank you. Right, yeah, we'll get something this year,
Yeah.
hopefully. Right, moving on, briefing note, this is, section 106 infrastructure funding statement. Welcome, councillor Wells. Right, Colin, you introducing it and then.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chair. Yes, this is our annual Air 106 infrastructure funding statement. This is the sixth one we've produced. And we have to have them published on the council website by the 31st of December, which this meeting will make sure that happens. So we use the 106 system, not the CIL. It's technically different. Rob can explain that if anybody wants to ask questions about the CIL. So we all know what happens. The plan application comes in when it gets passed. If and when it gets passed, it obviously has an effect on the community. The larger the application, the larger the effect on the community. So 106 legal obligations that plan committees impose on developers or officers if it's delegated, that to actually mitigate any effects on the community. And so the developer will have an obligation and pay contributions, and those contributions could go towards health, education, whatever is most needed in that area, sport and play, highways, and affordable housing. This report, it's a very, very full report, goes through everything that we've received, what's been used for, and what's still being held as a breakdown of all the different areas. So it's a dead straightforward report, nothing controversial, it's just something we've got to do annually.
Okay, thank you. So, what would you want to talk us through? We've got slides, have we?
No, I've not got slides.
Oh, it looks like a slide. So, we've got slides.
It does.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to slides. Oh, not then.
Yeah.
So, if you can follow it on your screen, I think it was in the agenda.
Yeah. I think I'm just going to talk through it in headline terms.
Yeah, that's fine.
As Councillor Horncastle says, this is basically an annual report we do. It reports on section 106 infrastructure contributions. Just to be clear, we secure various things on plan decisions on the site via planning conditions. Those are unilaterally imposed by the council. Section 106 agreements, all a section 106 agreement is a contract. It is a contract between the local authority and the landowner and developer to do certain things outside the site. So with a planning condition, we can take enforcement action to secure compliance. Or a section 106 agreement, which is outside the boundary, it will be a breach of contract between ourselves. We produce this every year. Online, the full infrastructure funding statement actually goes through how we collate and how we require section 106. As it explains the legislation, it explains where we can use them, where we can't. And there are lots of examples of where we have spent money and funding schemes. The headlines are, and I'll just explain some of the figures because the figures are different. And you're probably wondering why there's such a disparity in the figures. So there's an amount of money which is associated with section 106 agreements we have signed in that 12-month period, which is just over £3 million. There's a figure for how much we've actually collected, which is over £9 million, and the amount of money that we have retained, which is about £24 million. Just to be clear though, that is not sitting money. That is money which at any one time, I think about 88% of it is actually spent and is waiting for things to be done, like affordable housing built, school expansions done, or other matters. Those different figures are because it's a cycle, and that when we get an application in, we scope it to what is needed, we negotiate the amount of money we're going to get, we then make a decision, potentially planning committee makes a decision, it's signed, and when the developer hits certain trigger points, say if it's a scheme for 200 houses, having built the 101st house, they have to pay the money. We collect it, and then it is spent, and then it is monitored. The reason why there is so much variation in those three figures is quite often a permission can be granted and it can be 10 years until it's finished. Also, overlapping that is if you look at particularly at NHS expansions for things like new GP surgeries, there can be a 10-year running while the NHS waits until it's got enough 106 contributions from several schemes, it's got a pot, and then it goes out and it seeks planning permission for a new GP surgery and the money's spent. So there's a big lag in the system. But this is not a Northumberland issue. At any one time, local authorities hold about £3 billion of money. But money's coming in and coming out all the time. Okay. The final thing I'll say, and to finish on a Christmas positive, is that when you look at the infrastructure funding statement online, with all its worked examples, and it explains it, both central government and the local government association cite the way we do 106 as national good practice. And that's on their websites. Okay, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you for that. So obviously you've had the detail and an overview there. So has any member got any questions for Rob? Councillor Wills?
Yeah, the 24.83 million retained. What time frame would you consider appropriate for deploying them funds in the community infrastructure?
Well, the 24 million
Yeah, like what's
comprises probably several hundred schemes. So I can't say 6 months because there's money in there collected from decisions made 10 years ago and decisions made last year. And what it's spent on will be happening now in 2 years or 5 years' time. So there's a constant churn. That's why I quoted the figure. At any one time, I'll give that 20 plus million pound, 88% of it is effectively spent. And the job that I do is to negotiate, get the money, collect it, and then hand it over to education. And then education or affordable housing use it to do things. So that there isn't one figure. It'll be a meaningless figure to give one figure for it.
And so just to clarify, that 24 million, well, almost 88% of that is already allocated. Well, it's allocated to a particular thing and will be spent when that is ready. So if someone was trying to, make the point that's like 25 million just sat there unused, that's entirely not the case. No.
Well, that's a misunderstanding about how the system works. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Zakhanov?
I was just wondering if I could get any clarification on the bad debt provision on page 25, I think, just to understand it.
Yes, it does appear to be unique to Castle Morpeth, which upsets me.
Sorry?
On the bit down the figures, there's one of the by local area on the Castle Morpeth sheet. There's a big 143,000 bad debt provision.
Right, so yeah.
On local area committee breakdown, Castle Morpeth. There's a breakdown of each of the headings. There's bad debt provision minus 143,684 pounds 60.
What those are normally is when a landowner has declared insolvency and we will have to then seek to recover the money via looking at who the new landowner is. And the problem is, and this is one where we have to tread carefully, is that if, say, you're talking about a housing estate and the developer has gone into liquidation, if we were to take action, we would have to take action against the people who bought the houses. So we will do everything apart from doing that. Okay.
Well, this particular one, obviously, that heading is only on the Castle Morpeth area. It's not on the other one. So is that one particular scheme, or is it?
That will be. I'll get the details on that. I don't want to discuss it in a public forum in case we're not litigation as we speak on that.
Because it is a very precise amount of money. So
It is one scheme. Yes.
Councillor Spittle.
Why can't I see how much section 106 money has been spent in my ward?
Well, because what we do, we prepare this report annually, and on every planning committee on the agenda, which is online, you will see reports on new 106 agreements entered into by that planning area, and those have been collected. So we don't report at that scale of geography because of the issue of the very quick turnover, but we can give you figures by electoral ward as well if you want that.
I'd like to have a piece of that information I can click on, drill down and look at to see what 106 money has been collected in what ward areas and what investments have been reinvestments been made in those areas. Because I believe that I've got no section 106 money invested in my area.
Well, I think. But I think just on that, it's not as straightforward as that, because it's quite clear which ward a contribution is for, because it's from a development that will be in a particular area. But often 106 money is spent on more generic things, like it could be a school serving that ward, but it's not in the ward.
Yes.
Or GP surgery serving the ward, that's not in the ward.
Can I just make one point, which for new members is probably useful, is that 106 money is not a general pot. It is, well, I'll read it. I made the notes what Google legislation states, and it's in the funding statement that explains this. Is in that for every 106, it has to be necessary to make a planning application acceptable. So if there hasn't been a planning application in your area, that's required in 106, and there won't be any 106 money.
This is the point I'm making.
Right. Okay.
If I'm in a land-bound ward,
Yeah.
well, we can't expand because of the spine road or the coast. We don't benefit in any way, shape or form from section 106 money.
But that's the point though. You should be benefiting from 106. 106 isn't a benefit. 106, a 106 scheme is intended to mitigate the impact of a development in your area. So if you are land bound and you aren't getting schemes, there is no impact to mitigate. It isn't part of the general fund. Does that make sense?
It does to a degree, but an awful lot of people come from outside of my ward and come into my ward to use facilities.
Well, that's
And
not,
they're coming from areas that get 106 money. So you'll get, I might go back to the inequalities. We're talking about left Cheltenham. You're in a ward that's deprived.
Yeah.
You can see all the other wards around you getting investment. And then we sit and talk about this, and I can't actually see a picture of what's going on in each ward.
so what? So when you say using your facilities,
You've got the academy, Bedlington Academy. The buses are queued up all the way down the street.
right? Okay.
every day.
Yeah. Okay then. For say sixth form level education, it could well be that schemes in a wider area have contributed to work at that academy.
But I can't see that, can I?
Yeah, and this is where the churn of decisions mapped onto the geography becomes complex, because actually, if we did a land registry search for 106s in your patch, there may not be any. So what we're looking at is a difference in mapping between where the 106 fund is generated, where it is spent. Okay, what you are best doing on that, and also remember it's also a snapshot, because it might be a lot one year and nothing the next year. You are best putting in a request, and we'll do a runoff of it, because there are several hundred Section 106 agreements go through the process at any one moment.
But we haven't got what I'm saying is we should be able to have a live database.
Yeah, and there is.
Which you can actually click on.
And there is.
And look at it.
Yeah, and there is, but that would be based on where the decisions were made rather than where they were spent. Yeah.
And that's.
Yeah, and that, and so, yeah, and that is something actually we can look at, because what we are doing progressively is trying to get away from the idea of having a report which has 50 pages on it, and instead having a web page of links to where you could actually check things. Yeah.
All I see is what you're showing me.
Yeah, and
I can't see behind that.
Yeah.
I'll start working it for myself and see what I want to
yeah,
answer.
well, the thing is, when you say working out for yourself, it will be complex, because there's 8 steps we go through. And at any one time, you might not be able to detect what's about to be paid or what hasn't been paid. So what I would suggest is that in your area, it's on the planning committee reports. The overview is on here, in here, and this is also broken down by the former LAC area. One thing we haven't made a decision on yet, the one thing I was going to seek all your views on, is that since we started this year's monitoring, we obviously had the change to both planning committees and their boundaries, and we've had changes to what were the local area committees, which should have community forums. And now those two have different geographies. So what we could do is report both on planning committee basis and on a geography basis. And then we could have an online system for looking at I'd be interested to hear.
That was the question I was going to put. But I think it was good. Oh, so, Councillor Spilled, you?
Yeah, can I just ask about Section 106 doesn't probably apply then to the data centre or JDL cables or those sort of developments in Camas?
Right, we use 106 as we use it for a lot of purposes. Remember, all the provisions that Section 106 of the Act is that we can enter into a contract. So normally, and what this report gets at normally, is volume house builders pay the bulk of the money because they pay to mitigate the impact on school capacity, on NHS capacity, on highways, etc. capacity. So we use it for that. We also use those Section 106s on a wide range of other types of applications to secure other things. So, for example, the data centre will use the 106 to secure their commitment to providing apprenticeships, using local companies for supplies, supporting skills and training in the area. So that it didn't involve them paying us anything. It's just it involves them doing something. So again, the 106 is a contractual framework for getting them to do things.
By them to invest in that money in training within the ward within which they've built, that piece of money to place them like live actual terms.
It covers. Yeah, it covers because
the local people. This is what I'm trying to get.
It is.
All this building going on. It's that beating heart of Northumberland. They're going to give us 110 million. Or Camas itself has got this 100-foot building overshadowing it.
Yeah.
What are they going to get? What are the people going to get?
Yeah, the skills and training support is focused by wards which suffer certain levels of disadvantage in the southeast of the county. Their commitment to using local companies is about, firstly, Northumberland and then the wider northeast. And their skills and training programs is again focused on that part of the county. Okay. And the reason why we've done this, and actually we're pretty much a national leader in this, in that getting companies to do that is doing what you're saying. It's not just securing good investment for its own purposes. It's actually making sure that the local benefit does accrue to local communities.
No, it's Councillor Dodd next.
Yeah, right, nearly forgotten what the question was, but
On Stephen.
no, not yet. I've got two. The developers on small scale, whatever, I've noticed tend to go bust after the development's finished, so they can't be put at for any things that go wrong with the bill. Is that becoming standard now, so they can duck out of it? Is it a gateway out of coughing up?
I would say, it's no more prevalent than it has been in the past.
So it's not being used as a loophole.
Well, some come up, let's be honest, some small businesses could be alleged to use liquidation as a route to avoid a variety of issues, okay? The one thing that we are empowered to do, that we're not empowered to do in general 106s, so for highway works, because that is so fundamental, we often impose a requirement for a bond front, just in case there's a default, and then we trigger that bond after a 4-year period if the work hasn't been done. But for the other provisions, what we have to do is effectively go down the breach of contract route, which involves us putting effectively a charge on the land and then seeking to recover it, particularly by a forced sale.
But just on that point, what you need to earlier is that in those circumstances, it's often the householders that might.
And that is the real big unfairness in this, in that the 106 is both a contract and it's a charge on the land. Okay, and the charge on the land goes with the freeholder. So the big risk of us taking a very heavy-handed approach to this is that, particularly for small residential developments, to recover the money, we may have to theoretically take action against the new homeowners, which is something that we would seek to avoid.
Just on,
and then they would have to take private action and get out against the builder.
Just on that, what steps do we look at the covenant strength of the 106 parties? In the private world, when there's a company involved, often personal guarantees from the shareholders or directors are sought. Do we ever do that?
Oh, we're not empowered to do that.
So we can't contract with an individual as a guarantor.
What government would say is that this contract is different from a general, the tort laws, in that it is also tied by land charge to land, and the land isn't going to run off. But again, the ultimate sanction is if we think the public purse is owed X amount, that we could force the sale of that property. But as has been said, though, if that's a private new homeowner, that is not something we would really want to do.
The second question. A lot of us are dual hatters. One time it used to be district and town council, but I'm on the town council, and many of you will be on something similar. And the parish or the town council law, in my case, one person's been desperate to get his hands on what I'd call the 106 money. And I clashed last week, and I said, well, when the town council provides education, highways, social services, and all of that, that might have a gain. But I'm saying, I'm there to defend the county. Then they come up with this CIL, infrastructure levy. What weight does that carry?
Yeah, you can use what's called the Section 106 approach, which is a case-by-case negotiation for a contribution, or you can use a blanket approach called the Community Infrastructure Levy, and that basically is where you look at the costs of all the infrastructure implications in your local plan, which sets out how many houses are going to be built over the next 25 years. You cost that, then you divide that by the quantum of development, and then you work out a square meter charge. So if you build X square meters, you pay X amount. The problem with that is we have not followed through the cell opportunity, because generally in the north of England, your cell has to be viability tested. it will be set either at a low or at a zero rate for much of this county. So we've done use the 106 process. Government have toyed with making a mandatory tariff-based approach like that, but they're not followed it through. In the new consultation draft of the new National Planning Policy Framework, which came out last night, which I'll be providing a note to all members on shortly, that talks more about being less ambiguous about 106 asks. So in other words, what it's saying is things like, we would say, not you have to provide at least 10% affordable housing or at least 30% affordable housing. We would give a precise figure with a cost.
And does the town or parish have claim on any of them?
No,
That's all I need.
yeah. So, no, but there's an asterisk point here, though. We negotiate certain things, and in an area, part of the delay, this one, Councillor Rolls' question is pertinent. If, say, we're saying in an area, a town X, there isn't enough children's play areas, we will negotiate an amount of money to be spent on children's play equipment areas in that area. But actually, at the time we sign it, we probably don't know where. Well, like a school, we'll know which school needs to be expanded. So then we would invite bids in, and we have a board for that, from the town council for that particular type of funding. But it's only if that pot exists in that area, and it doesn't always exist in all areas. A good worked example in the report, and it's a really good project, is long distance footpath work that was done in Alnwick, where the community group put forward bids for funding for that from section 106. But the general 106 isn't a pot.
No. Yeah, and it's never going to be controlled by a town council.
No, but it would never. No.
Right.
They can put bids in like everybody else.
Right, Councillor Dale says.
Thank you very much. So just go back to fundamentally what various people have been saying. I think if you look at the list, if you live in the rural areas, the small villages, you don't get a lot of bills. And therefore, there's very little 106 funding. And actually, villages do suffer from that. And I know, I mean, I've got one under here, which is Stocksfield Parish Council, £12,000 towards their cliff rider. I had to put another 6 in. And the parish had to put small for one piece of equipment. And that only happened because somebody took a house down and rebuilt it. Otherwise, we have no other bills. So there's no 106 coming in. That's just a play. It was under time that it was sport and play. So it was one lot of money coming in, but divided. And the play funds always went to the parish area. However, the sport went to a larger area. And I think that would be helpful if all of us could understand the whole of the areas that each of our parishes are working with, or which boundaries they are in with. So for instance, Raleigh Mill, which we had before, that was within Forbridge, other areas and within different places. So if you've got that lit, because it actually makes quite a lot of difference. Because if you've got a small area and you want for play, not play for sport, you could actually go to Ponteland, who have loads, if they happen to be in that area, have lots of money for 106 and say, thank you very much. We'll have people. Yeah. But we can do, and that's happened before. But I think it would be helpful to those small areas, especially in sport. Obviously in play you can't do much about, but in sport, who they're actually allocated, maybe share the 106 funding with.
Yeah,
I did that right.
It's a good question. But the only issue is that because section 106 contributes to a range of things, from primary education right up to tertiary education, and for sport and play, and for health. And health can include hospital, GP, all manner of things. All those different types of infrastructure have what I call different catchment areas. So if you're talking about children's play equipment, that is very, very localised.
Specific, yeah.
That it makes sense probably to be in the parish.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about, say, a new youth football club or a rugby club being supported or a cricket club, that's probably going to be on a slightly bigger geography. So I think it would be awkward to come out with one boundary for this.
Yeah. I
Well,
think,
I'm sorry, but they are, I think you need to make clarification, but I'm talking about sport, I'm not talking about health, medical or school, or anything like that, I'm talking about sport. Because there is a defined sport area for each parish who work with next door, whichever parish they're with. So I think it would be clear for me, it would be helpful, and it is there.
Yeah,
It hasn't
that's
gone
something-
away, and
yeah.
it's important that we have it, because otherwise people don't understand where the funding is. So funding might come in next door, say for South Tyndale, and actually we could be in that area. One of my parish could be that area, they could get that money because they've had a massive amount of affordable housing, and they've got a lot of 106 funding, or they've got a lot of this, where we could actually borrow, have some, please, thank you.
Yeah, what this sort of exposes as well is that we don't just do a finger in the wind when we negotiate these. And every type of contribution is on the basis of a protocol and a strategy with each of the infrastructure providers. And so education have a programme, a capital committee programme, and we help fund that. We have a sports pitch provision strategy, and that's probably the place to go to look at what actually the focus is for particular areas. But that's a question we can look at for a minute. That's something we can look at.
Yeah, that would be, and also very quickly to say, use the bonds more. I've had a lot of problems with builders. We've actually had bonds in, and actually, when they have gone down, we're bound to
Yeah, I
come
think-
down, and I think it's a very good
let's
to
talk.
actually have.
Yeah,
It is. But the thing I would say is if I was builder X or Y and I was asked to pay a bond, I would say under what statutory provision are you required?
Absolutely, yes, but it's not a, it's a good incentive.
Yeah, it is. I agree. I would like the power to be able to do it.
no, yeah, but we can't make it a condition of the 106.
Well, the thing is,
Yeah.
planning conditions, this is why when I introduce planning conditions, we unilaterally impose. Section 106 agreements, it's an agreement, so that's a sign for it, and there's an intense negotiation period, and they would just decline to sign it.
Right.
But just for clarity, in case you've not come across this committee before, you've not been a planning committee, where an application decision requires a section 106, the one bit of leverage we have got is that if it goes to planning committee on the 1st of May, we do not issue the decision notice until the section 106 agreement is signed. So there's an element of brinkmanship in all of this as well. Okay.
Councillor Sesford?
No, there's that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's interesting the last few words you've said there. Right, in intense negotiations, and you agree a contribution on a scheme, and we know it goes to school stock to support housing, etc., etc., etc. If I just use for instance, and the numbers I'm going to give you are approximations because I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But say, for instance, there was a scheme on Station Road Exon, and I think 43 houses. And what happened was there was a 106 agreement made, and it was whatever it was. Again, this is approximately say £140,000 or something like that. And then later on they came back. So it already been agreed. So that's what was decided that had to contribute for that particular area based on the houses and the needs and this and that. And it was reduced to something like £106,000. And then they came back again. And I can't remember, I mean, and maybe, but came back 3 or 4 times, and then it was something like 20-odd thousand in the end. Now, if this is agreement, this is what is required and a necessity. I mean, they keep saying, well, oh, we can't afford it, but well, don't do anything. You know, you come in and you put in for this, and you know your obligations and all that. And this isn't the first time; it's happened many times over the years. Not so much recently because we haven't had many recently. So why is it that an amount is agreed but can still be changed?
Yeah,
And not just once,
yeah,
but twice, and possibly even 3 times.
Yeah, it can be, and this is a product of how the legislation works. In that, the company is able to say actually they want to renegotiate to 106 because of costs, viability, abnormal costs. They need to be recalculation. Okay, they're entitled to put a submission in to do that. We are not bound to accept it. However, what we do normally is we get their figures and then we go for external valuer who they pay for via us to say, is this figure reasonable or not? And sometimes they agree, and sometimes they don't. Okay. Equally though, the bit that we sometimes miss is we get schemes across the line. Sometimes we agree to what's called an overage. And that's where we say, okay, viability is fundamentally how much it costs to build the project against total sale value. Clearly, costs can go up, but actually, if you sometimes get a permission for something, you might actually getting actually much better sales figures. So we have triggers in there as well, which actually saying for every additional pound you get in costs, we get back. So it works both ways. And we do sometimes agree to reductions, and sometimes we don't agree to them. And if we don't agree to them, it has to go to arbitration via the appeal system.
But if it's gone in once and you've had an extra and do it, but then it come back again.
Yeah, and they're entitled to try it because, let's be honest.
Well, they changed the number of affordable housing.
Yeah. No, I agree. They are entitled to do this, and the issue is, I think we need to be honest about this, is that if we put, say, conditions on it saying you shall build it out of natural stone and your garden shall be large, whatever, even though they may argue that has an asset benefit in that what they actually build will be worth more. It is worth, the reason why I always say there's hard negotiations, Section 106 contributions, so money going out of the site, anything they can do to reduce that is better profit margins. So that's why they engage barristers and throw something at it, because it's worth them arguing. And that's why it's always good to have an up-to-date local plan that sets out the expectations. And actually, sometimes we will refuse them where they won't pay. Because one came through a couple of weeks ago where they said we can't afford to pay this. It's too much of an ask.
But it's not something that they do all the time, though. Time and time again.
They employ teams to do this. They employ teams to do this.
Yeah.
And we're in a position. A few weeks ago, a decision we made in May, we refused an application because they wouldn't contribute. And the inspector said, no, this contribution is necessary, justified and rational. And he dismissed their appeal. So they're going to come back and pay, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Colin, do you want to come in on that point?
Yeah. There's something Trevor's brought up. It's something I've spoken to Rob about before. And, Trevor mentioned a certain application and the sort of do with viability. Now, I don't think it's too much to do with this today, but it's all to do with 106. You had a situation earlier this year where an application came before the committee for the best site in Hexham. 2 minutes walk off the high street, a minute's walk from the railway station and the new bus station. And bit by bit, the 106 money was chopped down from quite a high figure, down, until the officer said, 90-something thousand pounds will be fine. Because the developer had paid a top whack for the price. So it was out of the realms of ever being possible to put affordable housing there because it'd been outbid.
Yeah.
And a similar scheme in the Whittenstall area on a brownfield site for roughly the same number of dwellings was clobbered with 1.3 million. And I argued with Rob about this back all them months. And I think somewhere behind the scenes, you got a look at it with developers saying, listen, you paid top whack, you paid over the odds for that site. You kind of come back and say it's not viable and get away with it.
And that is a really good question. Because actually, though, how the system should work and the government consultation on the new system, new National Planning Policy Framework last night mentioned this. Okay, right. What I just wrote down is we're not really talking about the infrastructure funding statement. We are talking about the operation of the Section 106 system here. And I would like to run a training session for members on this because actually there's a lot more to go at. The issue is when you sell your house, you sell it for how much you think you can get for it. Right? When you're doing a viability assessment, that includes a methodology called a residual land valuation. Okay, right? And this feels quite counterintuitive if you're not used to working in the land markets, right? See, that's the wrong way. What a housing site is worth, and this is the really important bit, is it's worth how much you will get for the development when you sell it, taken off the full costs of construction. And the full costs of construction include policy compliant full costs. So, for example, that should include the Section 106 costs, okay? Because otherwise, and I've seen this going back several years, not here but elsewhere, if it was as simple as saying, well, I've paid £10 million for the site, it doesn't stack up if I pay 106 for it. All it would need would be for the developer and the landowner to actually say, we'll say we paid this much for it, which will get us both out of 106 contributions, and then split the difference afterwards. So what we do, we actually should be ignoring purchase price. Purchase price, or the value of the land comes at the end of the equation. So in other words, to make it simple, if it's going to cost you £200 to build the houses on a site, and you get £300 for the site when it's finished, the site is worth £100. Nothing more. You may end up paying more to that through a competitive bidding process, but you can't use that, the higher amount, to offset contributions. So that's what's called the residual valuation. Okay, because it's what's left after you've paid for costs, and it isn't bricks and mortar; it's the cost, a policy compliant construction cost.
That's quite. Councillor Sim.
Oh, fine.
Oh, okay. I've got Councillor Carnevin next.
Are you
No,
asking on
you
that
go
topic?
back.
Because I'm switching subject.
No, I'm switching subject. Okay.
So on page 36, I was really happy to see that efforts were made to remove some of the invasive species plants. I was wondering, I've seen a lot of Himalayan balsam along our rivers, which grows really dense in the summer, and then in the winter dies back, leaving bare ground, so erosion on the riverbanks. And then we've got rhododendron ponticum as well in our woodlands, which, if left untreated, will just spread. It's very invasive, and it means that no plants can grow beneath it because it's such a dense canopy. So I was just wondering if as much urgency is being put in these areas as it is on the coast in this report.
Yeah, that's a good question. We can do ecological works if they are directly tied to the application site. In other words, if something on the application site has an impact, and by impact, this is why the World 106 is a very broad proposition. You build houses, an impact can be on full capacity, it can be on highway impact, it can be on ecological impact. The impacts you're talking about are normally very localised ones we can only deal with. More strategic impacts on ecology, and this is where the coastal mitigation system comes in, is where you have more population which causes or more tourism on the coast, which is a wide one. That's why we can do the coastal work over a wider area, and where ecological areas and requirements for things like management plans on areas of woodland, we do via 106, with only if it's related to the scheme. And so an example would be, if you build, right, say if you build a housing estate on the site of County Hall, it would be reasonable to ask for 106 security management plans on blocks of trees, both on the site and immediately near to it, because you want to protect them, but you couldn't do that by condition. Okay. So what I'm saying is, localise we can do on that. And the other provision is what we call biodiversity net gain is another one where we would seek to improve the ecology of an application by existing plus 10%. And that can relate to off-site works as well. So there's a matrix of policy tools we can use to deal with these things.
Is there any way you could send an email to me with that
I will do it.
explanation? Just
It's complex because, and like many issues with planning, you can speak in the abstract on strategic issues, but you can't speak in the abstract on site specific issues. So I will use that example and say why we could fund it on that one and why we can't do it as a general principle. Okay.
That would be great.
That's great. President?
Yeah, I just ask a question, because just to conclude, because what happens, there is nothing in here to say about timescale of the 106 agreement, because some are obviously attached to some various things, some aren't, some obviously have a longer timescale. I do know that in occasions that, for instance, I've just taken a new ward, I got an email, a nice one from the girl saying, there's so much in this box, rated £1,400. It's got to be spent by so and so at the end of this year. Okay, Mark. Now, if it's not spent, I've got it spent. Somebody, one of the parishes picked the money up and spent it on a play pot for something very small. But if it's not spent, where does that money go? Does it go back? And I'm not saying about all of them because they're all different types of 106 funding. For instance, for play, does that go back to the applicant who paid the original money out?
Sure, yeah. What happens, and this is another answer at it depends.
And
Right. On a general, let's say, medium scale, section 106, say a scheme for 80 houses, you would have provision in there, a play space, education, healthcare, affordable housing, okay? You have within that a hierarchy of importance. Normally, it's either affordable housing or education is first, and look at the figures. Education and affordable housing always is the big bulk, 106. If, say, you can't fulfill, or it's not appropriate to fill one of them. So, for example, if you've granted planning permission a few years ago for 100 houses and part of it's for affordable housing, and actually, but in the interim, an affordable housing scheme has been built in the village, it's just not needed. That money then would default to one of the other provisions, say education.
default will go.
To one of the other requirements, okay. So if you have a lot, so if say you have it for education and affordable housing.
Say play areas.
All play areas, okay. And if it can't be spent on one thing, it goes into the other pots. Okay. The only time that a developer gets a refund is when what's left cannot be spent.
So can I just ask you, there's one development and one thing which had play and sport, right?
Yeah.
Sport's been spent.
Yeah.
The other parishes, whatever, altogether. There is one pot for that play,
Yeah.
for that parish, and it hasn't been spent. And it's just a very clear, it's either got to go back to the original provider of the 106, whether it's whatever it is, or do you eat it up into a pot?
No, what we wouldn't do is we have no generic pots. What we would do though is, and it's a bit like your earlier question, if, say for example, the 106 funding is there to fund play equipment in the parish, and there isn't a scheme there to be had, or it's not necessarily, what we would do is probably extend the geography to which you would apply for it, and look to say the next parish if they would use it.
Fine. So
Up to the point when what we do sometimes, because things, the world moves on, and some of these 106s that you're seeing the money coming through here were probably linked to planning permissions granted in 2012, say, okay, right? If we want to change it fundamentally, i.e. if 106 says the money is for sport and play, and we want to use it to contribute to the GP surgery, we have to use a thing called a deed of variation, which is, it cannot be unilateral, it has to be with agreement with the developer.
Yeah.
That you use it to spend on something else, and that you do it on a case by case basis.
Well, we're doing audit on that one.
Councillor.
Thank you.
Is there a difference between in section 106 and housing and best The battery storage units for section 106.
Right, yeah. Yeah. Residential development has a list of things it normally needs to contribute to, and that's set out in the local plan. So that's education, because more houses, more pressure on schools. Healthcare, more houses, more pressure on GP surgery, etc. For other types of development, we would secure other things by section 106. So, for example, a battery storage area or a factory, we would normally look to secure not things that are pots of money, but they would be things like the training courses or highway works improvements, things like that. Okay, it's what you look at is the implications of something being built and what you need to make it acceptable in planning terms. If you remember my training course on planning, all this is linked. My training course on planning, I was really clear to say that all planning is looking at harm versus benefit. And actually, if you've got benefit, you need to make sure that benefit is delivered. That's why we have apprenticeship schemes, say on the data centre. Or that harm is mitigated. I want to, it can't do something else. It can't. It used to be perceived by politicians, and this is saying I've worked up and down the country. It is not a sweetener. It is there to offset harm or to secure benefit. So we use them on, say quarries have 106 requirements on them. That's often to do with things like the long-term management of a restored site, things like that. So there's many things we use section 106 for.
I've got two sites in my area in West Sleaford. I went round the site with a director from the solar company, see what they were going to do. And he said they were going to pay £110,000 into the community gain.
Yeah,
for West Sleaford.
yeah, and that is certain types of development, successive governments mess around with by the planning system. And you have what is called a tilted balance, right? You know, I've said harm versus benefit, right? So it used to be the case for open cast coal when that was a thing. And then it became used for wind farms and solar farms. But outside all that I've talked about, and that's in this document, developers were expected to contribute to a community pot as well, outside that. And for open cast coal, it was typically negotiated on, say, 5p a tonne of coal that came out, or for wind and solar by gigawattage. And they pay that, they then have a community fund that is separate. We do not administer that. The companies administer that themselves.
How do I access that if I want new play equipment for cameras?
Contact the company.
It's not a council scheme. They as part of their community engagement, they say we're going to have a pot of money that the community can access, and if you ask, we'll give it to you.
Yeah, and
The community foundation, I think the community foundation seems to manage quite a lot of them, certainly in my area.
Depends on the company, but yeah.
what was as an aside, what was interesting on this side of it is that nuclear power also has a tilted balance, and there's an expectation that nuclear power stations have a similar pot of money. Of course, that's based on X pence per gigawatt. And it meant that some very small rural communities that have nuclear power stations do not have a church hall within 50 miles that hasn't got a new boiler, a new roof, or a swimming pool, something like that. So
What money?
that's separate to the 106.
Okay.
With QTS, with their money they're putting into the community then, would be able to access that for this new play?
They will have, QTS have a corporate responsibility sort of part where they will have a community fund as a company. It's part of their PR, you know.
I was thinking of the money that they're giving to Northumberland County Council.
No. The money that they are giving to Northumberland county council is part of the land deal, and that is to there's £110 million used to help us deliver further economic development and growth, not
It's not one of those
six
things.
things.
Yeah, it's not 106 money, that's a commercial deal with the
That's a
land.
commercial deal with the.
Right, just so, I think one thing we haven't had a discussion on it, which I think Rob alluded to, is that the start of all of the planning committees, there was an area-based update on 106 agreements. Now, when it was easy when the planning committees and the local areas were the same boundaries, but they're not now. So as a committee, what are our thoughts? Do we think it should stay with the planning committees on their new areas? Or should there be updates to the what's now the local area community forums? So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes.
I
was just going to say, just being a new member, I feel like I don't have enough experience to know. So maybe an idea of like pros and cons
Okay.
of it would work.
It's actually, it's actually easier now than it would have been a few years ago, and that because we've got now a database system for this, which we can cut the data in a certain way. It's that which we need to know what you would like, and it will have to come with asterisks as though saying it is very time sensitive and time logging, and it will probably change. The figures will change from the date of publication of any report.
So what is because of the automated way you do things, what could now be happening is that at the start of a area planning committee on the agenda there would be here's the update for this area, but then they press a different button and then there could be an update for this local area council, which is a different boundary, but you could do it quite easily.
Yeah, we attach it to the planning committee. Yeah, we would. Yeah, I'm thinking. Yeah. It would be on the planning committee agenda. It'd say this does not relate to this planning committee boundary, but actually this is the these are the different ways. Yeah, both on planning committee agendas.
Yeah.
And I just think we've got to be careful because actually if they're big planning commissions, they'll have a bigger impact on more parishes. And they could come from across the boundary. Because the education, for instance, education is totally separate. So we've got it, that might have a misplan. And I just think we could have the basic ones maybe. I'm saying play, sport, also any big, I mean, if we're aware, I think this is important, if we're aware of any 106 large ones. I mean, how many, I have to be honest, how many planning applications do we have in our area, apart from the big ones, which we had the one big one the other day with housing. Majority of them are just one houses or small ones, which will probably impact on the town or village. But if it was sport, it could impact on.
We're not talking about ward-based. We're talking about the difference between the local planning areas, which is there's now 3 across the county, and then there's what used to be the local area committee areas like Castle Morpeth, Washington, Blythe. So there's 5 of them. So at the moment we've got a breakdown of 106s in the old 5 different areas, which is because that's what the planning committees used to be. Now the planning committee boundaries have changed. There's only 3 of them. So what we're saying is, do we still want a breakdown by local area committee area, and a planning area as well? That's
Planning area.
as in,
I vote planning area only because it's.
well, it would make sense if it's on. That's what the point is. If it's a planning area committee, that planning area committee has a certain boundary. Then on the agenda of that committee would be everything within that area. And that's how it used to be, but it was easy then because the 2 were coterminous. They're no longer coterminous. So what are we recommending? Are we recommending that we just have it 3 ways, or are we having it 5 ways still? Colin, have you looked?
It can get confusing, this. It'll get confusing for the people who are sitting on the plan committees when they see one report, and for everybody else who's on the community forums see a different report. It's not my decision, it's yours. But I would suggest, where is the best place to discuss it? If you discuss it at only the planning committees, right, then a lot of people won't see it unless there's information. So it's looking like you're going to have to give it if you want just one report, the right place is the community forum. But you may have to do two slightly different reports, one for the planning committees.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other option.
It's in an electronic version.
Yeah.
Which you can access
Yeah.
online.
Yes, we'll look at it.
I'll just quickly come in there. What's changed since May is previously everybody sat on the planning committee. We don't now.
Yeah.
So if you only had it at the planning committee, you're going to chop some people out.
Yes.
Sure, good. How about, that one's to make work. How about the planning committees get it by planning committee areas and the local area for.
Well, yes, I think that was what I was suggesting. Is it basically, yes. So what happens is each different committee has an item on the agenda.
Yeah.
And it lists all, but you could just sort them by the boundaries of that committee.
Yeah.
So it'll be slightly different report because it covers a different area, but it'll be the same.
Can do that.
Yeah. And that's with the powers of modern technology, that's not easy.
And the online point is,
Yeah.
of a bit, just to be really clear on one thing, is that I don't know if you've had a play with the public access system on planning, which is where the applications are, where you can see every application going back to the year dot, all the comments, all the reports, all the 106s, all on there. Well, that means you have to go into them one by one. What we'll probably do is rather than a report, because what we can do is flag up by ward, and then we see which applications in your patch have 106s.
Online.
The one thing I haven't said, right, I know you said this. One thing I haven't said though, the reason why the bulk of them, and there's a map in the infrastructure statements from where they are.
Yeah.
And that shows all 106s. But the bulk of what we're talking about is the residential ones that have contributions for healthcare and education, etc. Normally, for affordable housing, it's only applications of 10 units or more, or 5 units or more in the national landscape area on the coast. So there's less big applications in the rural areas, and actually the system doesn't allow us to get affordable housing contributions from all students in those areas as well. So that's why there's an accentuated spatial difference.
Okay. Well, we have a recommendation. So the recommendation proposed is that the update on 106 continues to go on the planning committee agendas with the boundary of that planning committee, and also a report will go onto the agendas of local area councils with the boundaries of that local area council. The same information to all councillors, because all councillors are on a local area council. That means we're getting more councillors involved and providing that information. So that's a recommendation. Are we happy with that?
And can we add on it and explore improved access for local members on what exists in there?
Yes. And if we can, I don't know how we should, again, it was mentioned by Councillor Spittle, is like, for example, my ward is the town centre, so it's got the GP surgeries, the schools and all. So all the money is going to be spent in my ward, which is great. But obviously you're not building the houses in my ward, so we just have that balance of
and that's a natural consequence and an expectable and predictable consequence of the system.
You mentioned earlier on about diversity net gains. And all this by the diversity, I have the clue who's buying who, buying what. Everybody's doing this, that, and the other. And I think we need some clarity around the whole thing because we've got people building houses, paying off the borrow, pay this, all this type of stuff going on. And I can't get my head around it because it's all over the place. It might be your taxes, but anyway. But I think it would be helpful because I'd like to know why we're buying this from that and where you're buying this from and that from. All the value of it because it's just in the air as far as I can see.
The market and the operation of the biodiversity net gain system is now beginning to settle down because it's been in for a couple of years now. And there's a biodiversity net gain system, there's the nutrient neutrality issue, and there's the environmental outcome system which we're coming in as well, which is going through the house at the moment. And I suggest a training session on those. tied in with other things as well.
Yeah.
But I think a 106 trading session in itself, the operation of the system will be useful because it is complex.
That's a recommendation.
Yeah.
Yes.
You want to mention it?
Yeah, okay, I'm just been informed, obviously, the agendas, the community partnerships are going to be discussed, and our recommendation is that that goes onto the agenda, so that recommendation should go to that meeting and discuss.
There's a development meeting that the chairs and vice chairs
Yes.
of the community partnership forums that is being arranged for, I believe, the beginning of February. That date isn't, it's just obviously the whole practicalities and the arrangements with regard to the community partnerships are developing. It's not what the local area councils received in the past.
Yeah.
But that recommendation about sort of the report and the 5 areas and where that fits with the community partnerships, certainly I can make sure that goes to that development.
I think which is on your other chairs.
Or is it the annual report that you're talking about?
Because the bit I think that bits that the public will be interested in is actually the fact that 106s have been signed, have been negotiated, entered into and signed is an abstract until the point they reach the triggers. What I think people would like to see, and what we've tried to do in the actual online infrastructure system, is have photographs of things we've actually done with it.
Yeah.
And maybe not the best of an annual report to the local areas on what's been done with the money.
Well, if we can make a recommendation to them, and I
Chairs can talk about
and as Richard's a chair of that, so yeah.
Can I make
Yep,
the point
yep,
that the wish list was a year, probably 18 months, that we look at this again, see how
When this report comes back.
Yeah.
And then because obviously in a year and a half time, we'll be a year and a half out of a new council where we might say it's not working or it is working or whatever, so we can fix them.
Well, this is a regular report, comes every year, doesn't it? So they'll come back next
It
year.
comes every year.
Every year. It's an annual report.
Just one thing, it is how we do this and how we report on it is up to how we report on it's up to us, but how we use the system is driven primarily by national legislation and change to government approaches, and they are changing it all the time.
Yeah. So as you alluded to, that you got some update last night, and that will feed through.
Last night, a big thing came through. I'll be doing a note to biggest changes in planning since I think 2012.
Will you still be able to get 106 agreements then if we don't have the powers of the committee to put them on?
Yes.
Sorry?
Yes.
Well, yes. Yeah, well, who knows what this government will do next? But yes, we'll keep you updated as and when. Right. Thank you very much. That's been a very, very productive discussion. And actually a good recommendation. Go
Yeah.
and okay, just to finish off then. The work programme. Is there information? Yeah.
Yeah, the work programme. So you are very busy in January, February and March, very full agendas, very meaty items. There isn't much scope for anything else, I'm afraid. However, I have had some more information about the library service review. I've been in correspondence with Karen last since the start of the meeting. The report that's going to Cabinet in February is just setting out the proposals. Setting out the proposals.
That's our big consultant on.
The consultation will be done online. There'll be hard paper copies in libraries. There will also be face-to-face sessions with staff and members of the public. Part of that consultation. Then the report will come to this committee, and you will be consultees as well. The budget, the savings were identified in the 24-25 budget. The target for savings is identified there, and provision has been made in the current budget and the 26-27 budget.
Right. Can I just ask you then, the important thing is that the rural areas, and this is a big one, where we have a bus, the library bus.
Yeah.
It's the rural areas which need to respond to this consultation because there's a lot of problems.
Yeah.
So can you make sure that all the rural parish councils are sent a consultation document, please?
I will do
Because
that.
it is really quite upsetting what's going on. And the lack of.
And just to finish that point off, the session is anticipated to be in the summer 2026. So report, set up proposals February next year with a final decision in the summer.
in the summer, but we'll give them a chance to discuss them and make representations. Yeah. Okay,
We're happy there.
last item, urgent business. I'm not informed of any, so I will close the meeting. Thank